After school at Beaumont Crossing, three white bullies set their sights on a quiet black boy they think is defenseless. They corner him in the empty parking lot, laughing and filming his humiliation for social media clout. But what they don't realize is that his older sister, a seemingly ordinary 16-year-old and a martial arts prodigy, is about to step from the shadows. Her skills will turn the tables and spark a firestorm, exposing corruption and forcing a town to reckon with the cost of silence and the strength of one determined family. Before we go any further, comment where in the world you are watching from and make sure to subscribe, because tomorrow's story is one you don't want to miss. The afternoon sun beat down on the cracked asphalt of Beaumont Crossing Preparatory's back parking lot. Caleb Hollis adjusted his blue hoodie, trying to make himself smaller as he hurried between the rows of gleaming SUVs and luxury sedans. His backpack weighed heavy on his narrow shoulders, stuffed with detailed notes from the robotics club meeting. This shortcut usually helped him avoid trouble. Fewer eyes, fewer chances for confrontation. But today, the empty lot felt like a trap waiting to spring. "Well, look who it is!" A loud voice bounced off the parked cars. The little genius himself. Caleb's stomach dropped as Trip Whitmore stepped out from behind a black Range Rover, his varsity jacket as bright as a warning sign. At 6'2", Trip towered over Caleb, his perfectly styled hair and expensive shoes screaming old money and unchecked privilege. Going home," Caleb managed, his stutter betraying his rising panic. He tried to sidestep around Trip, but two more figures in matching red jackets emerged to block his path. Derek and Sloan Whitmore, Trip's cousins, moved in perfect sync as they closed the triangle around Caleb. The twins shared the same predatory smile, phones already raised to capture whatever was about to happen. "What's the rush, Brainiac?" Derek's phone tracked Caleb's every nervous movement. "We just want to chat about that A+ you got in advanced physics." "Yeah," Sloan chimed in, circling closer. "Must be nice being teacher's pet, making the rest of us look bad." Caleb clutched his backpack straps tighter. "I don't want any TT trouble." "Trouble?" Trip's laugh was sharp and cold. "We're just having a friendly conversation. Right, boys?" The twins nodded, their matching grins growing wider. Sloan's phone light blinked red. Recording. "Look," Trip gestured to a puddle of spilled milk on the asphalt, probably from someone's dropped lunch. "Why don't you take a little break? Rest those genius knees for a minute?" Caleb shook his head, trying to keep his voice steady. "I need to get home." Trip's hand shot out, gripping Caleb's shoulder with bruising force. "I said kneel." The twins moved in closer, their expensive sneakers squeaking on the pavement. Derek zoomed in with his phone, while Sloan provided commentary in a mock documentary voice. "Watch as the superior specimen establishes dominance." Trip's fingers dug deeper. "Don't make this harder than it needs to be. Know your place." The words carried a weight beyond simple bullying. They echoed with generations of similar threats, similar moments. Caleb felt his knees buckle, partly from the pressure but mostly from the shame burning in his chest. "That's it," Trip guided him down, forcing him toward the puddle. "Right where you belong." The milk soaked through Caleb's jeans instantly, cold and sticky against his skin. His robotics notes spilled from his unzipped backpack, papers scattering across the wet ground. The twins circled like sharks, capturing every humiliating second. "Perfect shot," Derek laughed. "This'll get so many views." "Hold up," Sloan adjusted his angle. "Get his face when he—" A sudden wind seemed to sweep through the parking lot, carrying with it the sharp click of dress shoes on pavement. The sound was precise, measured, like a metronome counting down to 0. Jada Hollis emerged from between two parked cars, her white dress shirt crisp against her dark skin, black pleated skirt swaying with each deliberate step. Her ponytail swung like a pendulum as she assessed the scene, eyes moving from her kneeling brother to the phones to Tripp's hand still gripping Caleb's shoulder. Let him go. Each word carried the weight of an iron bell tolling. Tripp's smile widened. Or what? You'll tell a teacher? Jada's stance shifted subtly. Feet shoulder-width apart, weight balanced perfectly. Anyone trained in martial arts would have recognized the preparation for what it was. The Whitmore boys, however, only saw a girl half their size. Last chance, Jada's voice remained eerily calm. Step away from my brother. Make us, Derek challenged, still filming. What happened next seemed to defy physics. Jada moved like flowing water, each motion precise and inevitable. Her first strike knocked Derek's phone spinning skyward in a glittering arc. Before it reached its peak, she had already disabled Sloan with a lightning-fast joint lock that left him gasping. A girl named Luna, previously unnoticed behind a nearby car, caught Derek's phone out of the air. Without missing a beat, she turned it on the unfolding scene, capturing every second of what came next. Tripp released Caleb and lunged at Jada, but she redirected his momentum with textbook Northern Shaolin technique. Her movements were controlled, efficient. No wasted energy, no wild swings, just precise applications of force that left the bigger boy sprawled on the ground. Derek tried to grab her from behind, but Jada flowed around his attempt like smoke, using his own weight to send him tumbling into his brother. The twins collapsed in a tangle of red varsity jackets and wounded pride. Derek's phone spun through the air, catching the late afternoon sunlight like a jewel. Time seemed to slow as Jada stepped forward, her movements fluid and purposeful. Behind her, Caleb scrambled to his feet, clutching his soggy robotics notebook against his chest like a shield. His jeans were still dark with spilled milk, but his eyes were fixed on his sister. "Think you're special because you took a few classes?" Tripp snarled, his face flushed with rage and embarrassment. His perfect hair was mussed now, his varsity jacket wrinkled. Without waiting for an answer, he charged at Jada like a bull, all brute force and no technique. Jada sank smoothly into a low horse stance, her pleated skirt settling around her knees. As Tripp reached her, she moved with the practiced grace of thousands of training hours. Her parry was almost gentle, redirecting his force in a circular motion that left him grasping at air. In one continuous movement, she pivoted, using Tripp's own momentum against him. His eyes widened in shock as his feet left the ground. The next instant, he slammed onto his back with a heavy thud that knocked the wind from his lungs. Derek, still staring at the space where his phone had been, spotted a discarded lacrosse stick near one of the parked cars. He snatched it up, gripping the aluminum shaft like a weapon. "You're gonna pay for that phone?" He swung the stick in a wild arc aimed at Jada's head. But she was already moving, flowing like water inside his guard. Her hands found his wrist with surgical precision, applying pressure to exactly the right points. Derek's fingers sprang open involuntarily, releasing the stick before it could complete its arc. In the next breath, Jada executed a textbook armbar. Derek's elbow straightened against its natural bend as she guided him downward. She controlled his descent to the pavement, ensuring he landed without injury despite his attempt to hurt her. Sloan, watching his brother go down, let out a roar of frustration. He dropped his shoulder and charged, trying to tackle Jada around the waist. But she read his intention before he'd taken 2 steps. Shifting her weight, she sidestepped his rush with the grace of a matador. As Sloan stumbled past, Jada's foot swept his leading leg out from under him. Before he could recover, her fingers found the pressure point above his elbow. The crane beak pinch sent sharp signals of pain through his arm, and he let out a high-pitched yelp. But Jada's control was perfect. The joint remained intact, though thoroughly immobilized. Tripp had managed to get his breath back. He pushed himself up, face contorted with fury. His designer shoes scrabbled against the asphalt as he launched himself at Jada again, throwing a wild haymaker that telegraphed his intentions from a mile away. Jada ducked smoothly under the punch. Her leopard fist strike to his solar plexus was precisely calibrated. Enough force to empty his lungs, but not enough to cause lasting damage. As Tripp doubled over, gasping, he fumbled for his phone, trying to film what was happening. Jada's palm heel strike caught the device perfectly, spider-webbing its screen into useless fragments. Behind her, Derek had struggled to his feet one more time. He tried to creep up on her, but Jada's awareness extended in all directions. Without even turning her head, she dropped into a spinning back kick that caught him square in the thigh. His leg went numb instantly, and as he toppled, Jada's guiding hand ensured he slid harmlessly into his brother. The twins ended up tangled together, their pristine varsity jackets now streaked with dirt and gravel. Their matching expressions of shock would have been comical under other circumstances. Luna stood between two parked cars, Derek's phone steady in her hands as she captured every moment. "Oh my God!" she breathed, her amazement clear in her voice. Jada straightened up, her breathing as calm and measured as if she'd just finished a light workout. Her eyes swept the parking lot, checking for any other threats. Finding none, she moved to Caleb's side and placed a reassuring hand on his shoulder. In the sudden quiet, police sirens wailed in the distance, growing louder as they approached down Oakmont Street. Luna lowered the phone, her face serious. "They'll want this," she said softly, holding up the device that had captured everything. Jada nodded once, reaching down to retrieve her satchel from where she'd set it aside. "Stay behind me, Caleb," she said, her voice steady and certain. "This isn't over yet." The first police cruiser turned into the lot, its red and blue lights painting the scene in alternating colors. Sunlight glinted off the scattered fragments of Tripp's shattered phone screen and the puddle of spilled milk, silent witnesses to a confrontation where skill and discipline had prevailed over blind aggression. Later, in the warm familiarity of the Hollis living room, Jada carefully cleaned the scrapes on Caleb's knees, while Mama D hovered nearby, her hands twisting her apron with worry. Meanwhile, on Luna's social media feed, the video she'd titled "Sister Strikes Back" racked up thousands of views. Comments poured in, praising Jada's incredible restraint and precise technique. A notification pinged on both Jada and Caleb's phones. An email from school administration announcing a disciplinary hearing scheduled for first thing tomorrow. In his wood-paneled study, Chief Randall Whitmore sat rigid in his leather chair, jaw clenched as he watched the viral video for the 20th time. He'd muted the sound, but every movement still burned into his brain. His son, Tripp, thrown to the ground like a rag doll by some teenage girl. The timestamp in the corner showed over 50,000 views, and climbing. His fingers drummed against the polished mahogany desk, each tap matching his rising pulse. The desk phone sat within reach, its presence heavy with meaning. He knew what needed to be done, but the call would change everything. Family loyalty demanded action, yet this would pull his sister into the mess. Chief Whitmore picked up the receiver, punching in the private number few people had access to. It rang twice before Mayor Judith Whitmore's crisp voice answered. "Randall, it's late." "Judith, we have a situation." His voice was tight, controlled. "That video of Tripp, I've seen it." The mayor's tone carried the same steel as her brother's. 53,000 views and spreading fast. Before sunrise, we'll control the story. Chief Whitmore leaned forward, his reflection in the desk's surface showing the hard lines around his mouth. "But I need your help." The next morning, sunlight streamed through the high windows of Beaumont Prep's auditorium, casting long rectangles of light across the wooden floor. The emergency board session had drawn a crowd. Teachers, Administrators and a handful of carefully selected parents filled the first few rows of seats. Jada sat straight-backed in her chair before the board members' table, her school uniform pristine. To her left, Caleb hunched slightly in his seat, his fingers worrying the edge of his blue hoodie. Mama D sat on his other side, her nurse's scrubs traded for a conservative dress, her expression calm but watchful. Board President Harrison cleared his throat, shuffling papers importantly. "We're here to address yesterday's incident in the senior parking lot. Miss Hollis, please describe what occurred." Jada's voice carried clearly through the auditorium. "I found 3 senior students, Trip Whitmore, Derek Whitmore, and Sloan Whitmore, forcing my brother to kneel in spilled milk. They were filming him and making racist comments. And you responded with physical violence." Harrison's tone carried a hint of accusation. "I responded with controlled defensive techniques to stop their assault," Jada corrected firmly. "I used only the force necessary to protect my brother and myself." Caleb leaned forward, his stutter more pronounced under stress. They pushed me first. They knocked my pop project notes in the milk and—" "One at a time, please," Harrison interrupted, though his eyes skipped past Caleb to where Mama D sat. "My grandson is telling the truth," Mama D stated, her quiet dignity filling the space. "Those boys have been targeting him for weeks. We have documented every incident." In the second row, Coach Mallory shifted in his seat, his expression troubled. His eyes moved between Jada and the board members, taking in the subtle current of tension in the room. The questioning continued for another hour, with board members picking apart every detail of the confrontation. They seemed particularly focused on Jada's martial arts training, pressing her repeatedly about whether she had initiated any physical contact. When the session finally broke for deliberation, Coach Mallory approached Jada as she gathered her things. "That was some impressive technique yesterday," he said quietly, careful to keep his voice down. "Clean transitions, perfect control, exactly how we train it." Jada nodded cautiously, aware of the eyes watching them. "Thank you, Coach." Mallory glanced around before slipping something from his pocket, a small thumb drive. "Security cameras in the locker room caught some interesting conversations before they went after your brother," he murmured, pressing it into her palm. "Might want to keep that safe." The board reconvened 15 minutes later. Harrison's face was grave as he announced, "Given the serious nature of this incident, we will need 48 hours to review all evidence and reach an appropriate verdict. All parties are dismissed until Thursday morning." The late afternoon sun painted long shadows across the Hollis family's front porch as they sat around the small table, containers of Chinese takeout spread between them. The events of the day had left them all drained, picking at their food more than eating it. Mama D broke apart her fortune cookie, reading the slip of paper inside with a small smile. "Sometimes victory comes in small steps," she read aloud before adding, "and sometimes it comes with a side of sweet and sour chicken." Caleb managed a weak laugh, pushing his rice around with his chopsticks. "Do you think they'll believe us?" "They have to," Jada replied, though her eyes tracked the police cruiser that rolled past their house for the second time in 20 minutes. The headlights swept across their porch, lingering just a moment too long before the vehicle continued down the street. Mama D reached across the table, squeezing both her grandchildren's hands. The gesture carried years of understanding about how fragile victory could be, especially in Beaumont Crossing. They continued their meal in thoughtful silence, the empty takeout containers collecting between them as the sky deepened to purple. The police cruiser passed once more, its presence a reminder that while they had won today's battle in the auditorium, the war was far from over. But for now, they had this moment, family together on their porch, fortune cookie wisdom, and the small comfort of knowing they had stood their ground. The sharp rap of knuckles against wood jolted Jada from sleep. Her eyes snapped open in the darkness of her bedroom, heart already racing. The knocking came again, more insistent this time, accompanied by a commanding voice. "Beaumont Police Department, open up!" Down the hall, she heard Mama D's bedroom door creak open. Jada threw off her covers and grabbed her phone, checking the time. 11:47 p.m. Through her window, red and blue lights pulsed against the neighbor's white siding. "Coming!" Mama D called out, her voice steady despite the late hour. Jada hurried into the hallway just as Caleb emerged from his room, rubbing sleep from his eyes, his blue hoodie wrinkled from bed. "What's happening?" he whispered, his stutter more pronounced with fear. Before Jada could answer, heavy footsteps thundered up their front porch steps. The knocking became a pounding that seemed to shake the whole house. Mama D reached the front door in her flower-print robe, Jada and Caleb close behind her. The moment Mama D opened the door, 3 officers pushed their way inside, flashlight beams cutting through the dim living room. Behind them, the night air carried the sound of more police cars arriving. "Caleb Hollis?" The lead officer's hand rested on his holster as he fixed his gaze on the 13-year-old. "You're under arrest." "What?" Jada stepped forward, but another officer blocked her path. "On what charges?" "Assault with bodily fluids," the officer replied, already reaching for his handcuffs. "We have video evidence of him spitting on 3 students during yesterday's altercation." Mama D's voice cracked like a whip. "That's a lie. Those boys attacked him." "Ma'am, step back," the 3rd officer warned, creating space for his colleague to approach Caleb. "We have a warrant." Caleb's eyes went wide with panic. I never—" His stutter worsened as the officer grabbed his arm. "Don't touch him." Jada moved to intervene, but Mama D caught her arm. "Baby, don't," she whispered urgently. "They're looking for a reason." Through the open door, Jada spotted Chief Whitmore standing beside his department SUV, watching the scene unfold. Even in the darkness, she could see the satisfaction in his stance. The officers began reciting Caleb's rights as they led him toward the door. His small frame looked even younger in his rumpled sleep clothes, hands now cuffed behind his back. "We need to see this supposed video evidence," Mama D demanded, following them onto the porch. "You can't just take a child in the middle of the night." One of the officers produced a tablet, playing a grainy clip that showed yesterday's confrontation from a new angle. The footage had been clearly edited, choppy and dark, but appeared to show Caleb making a spitting motion toward the Whitmore boys before Jada arrived. "That's not what happened." Jada's fists clenched at her sides. "They edited that footage." "The video speaks for itself," the lead officer stated flatly. "You can contest the evidence at the hearing." They watched helplessly as the officers guided Caleb down the porch steps. He looked back once, eyes shining with tears in the police lights. "Jay?" His voice was small, frightened. "I'm coming with you," Mama D declared, already heading for her car. "He's a minor. You can't question him without a guardian present." The lead officer nodded curtly. "Follow us to the station." Jada started after them, but Mama D turned back. "Stay here, baby. Call Mrs. Price. We'll need a lawyer first thing in the morning." The convoy of police vehicles pulled away, leaving Jada alone on the porch. Across the street, curious neighbors peered through their curtains at the commotion. Chief Whitmore remained by his SUV for a moment longer, making eye contact with Jada before climbing in and driving away. Inside, Jada paced the living room, her phone pressed to her ear as she left an urgent message for Mrs. Price. Her mind raced through the events of yesterday: the original confrontation, the board hearing, Coach Mallory's thumb drive. The pieces were starting to form a pattern, one that made her stomach twist with anger. 20 minutes later, she stood outside the police station, staring through the glass doors at the harsh fluorescent lighting within. The night dispatcher barely glanced up as Jada entered, pointing her toward a hard plastic chair in the waiting area. Through a window in the door to the holding area, Jada caught glimpses of Caleb sitting alone in a juvenile holding cell. The buzzing lights cast stark shadows across his face as he huddled on the metal bench, still in his sleep clothes, looking impossibly small. Mama D sat in a chair near the holding area door, her back straight despite her exhaustion, watching every officer who passed with steel in her gaze. She'd already been told they'd have to wait for processing, that nothing could be done until morning. Jada's reflection in the glass doors showed her own face set in grim determination. Her hands, trained through countless hours of martial arts practice to strike with precision, now curled into tight fists at her sides. The doctored video playing on loop in her mind only fueled her resolve. The station's clock ticked past midnight, each second marking time until dawn, when they could begin dismantling this fabricated case. But for now, all they could do was wait. Caleb alone in his cell, Mama D standing guard, and Jada at the entrance. A silent sentinel promising justice with every breath. Mrs. Ruby Price's kitchen smelled of rich chicory coffee and fresh-baked biscuits. Morning sunlight streamed through lace curtains, casting delicate patterns on the worn wooden table where she sat with Jada, examining Coach Mallory's thumb drive on her ancient laptop. "Child, you haven't slept," Mrs. Price noted, sliding a steaming mug toward Jada. Her voice was gentle but carried the weight of someone who'd fought similar battles decades ago. "Can't sleep." Jada wrapped her hands around the warm ceramic, dark circles under her eyes. "Not while Caleb's in there." Mrs. Price adjusted her reading glasses, peering at the screen. "These security feeds are exactly what we need. Multiple angles, clear timestamps." She clicked through several files. "But we need to move fast. Evidence has a way of vanishing when it threatens the right people." "The Whitmores already doctored one video," Jada said bitterly. "Made it look like Caleb was the aggressor." Mrs. Price took a careful sip of coffee. "That's why we need backups, lots of them, and witnesses who'll stand by their statements when pressure comes." She pulled out a yellow legal pad covered in her precise handwriting. "First step, we secure these originals. I've got a friend at the ACLU who can authenticate the timestamps." Jada leaned forward. "What about the phone footage? Luna's viral video?" "Already downloaded and saved to 3 separate clouds," Mrs. Price said with a small smile. "Your generation may live online, but some of us old folks know our way around digital evidence, too." She tapped her pen against the pad. "Now, about that podcaster who's been messaging you. Truth Trek." Jada pulled up the messages on her phone. "They want to run the story tomorrow night. Said they've been tracking similar cases across the state." Mrs. Price nodded slowly. "Good. We need wider exposure. Local media won't touch this. Too many connections to the mayor's office." She made another note. "But we need more than just the assault footage. We need to show the pattern of selective enforcement, targeted harassment." Mrs. Price's voice took on the sharp edge that had made her legendary in courtrooms. "How many other students have the Whitmore boys terrorized? How many complaints disappeared?" She paused. "And why was Coach Mallory so quick to help you?" Jada sat back, considering. "He seemed nervous, like he wanted to do the right thing, but something's holding him back," Mrs. Price finished. She stood, moving to a filing cabinet in the corner. "People like that, they're either being pressured or protected, sometimes both." She pulled out a thick folder. "We need to know which before we rely on his evidence." The morning light grew stronger as they worked, mapping out connections on Mrs. Price's legal pad. Names, dates, incidents that seemed minor alone but formed a disturbing picture together. Jada's coffee grew cold, untouched. "There's one more thing," Mrs. Price said finally. "We need to prepare for backlash. Once this goes public, they'll try to discredit you. paint you as the violent one. Let them try, Jada's voice was steel. I've got nothing to hide. No, but you've got plenty to protect. Mrs. Price's eyes were kind but serious. Your future, your family, your dojo's reputation. We need to be strategic about this. She pulled up the security footage again, studying the precise movements Jada had used to disable the bullies. Clean technique. Defensive only. No excessive force. She nodded approvingly. We'll emphasize that. Show you were protecting your brother, using minimal necessary force. Jada's phone buzzed. Another message from Truth Trek, requesting additional background details. Mrs. Price read it over her shoulder. Perfect timing. Send them a clip, just enough to prove we have the goods, but hold back the strongest evidence until broadcast. She smiled. I didn't win all those cases by showing my full hand too early. The day stretched on as they prepared their digital arsenal. Mrs. Price made calls to former colleagues, building a network of support. Jada compiled clips, wrote detailed descriptions, gathered witness statements from sympathetic classmates. As evening approached, Jada sat at her laptop, crafting the email to Truth Trek. Through Mrs. Price's window, she could see the courthouse clock tower rising above the trees, its face glowing in the gathering dusk. The hour hand crept toward 8 as she attached a carefully selected video clip, just enough to prove the Whitmore boys' guilt, but holding back the most damning evidence for tomorrow's broadcast. Her cursor hovered over the send button. Across the table, Mrs. Price nodded encouragingly. Remember what I taught you about timing in court? Sometimes the strongest move is making them wait for what's coming. Jada clicked send. The courthouse clock chimed the hour, its deep tones carrying across the darkening town. She watched the email confirmation appear, knowing the next 24 hours would determine everything. For Caleb, for justice, for the truth they'd worked all day to protect. The morning air was thick with dew as Jada crouched beneath the football stadium bleachers. Metal creaked overhead as Coach Mallory's footsteps approached, his shadow cutting through the pre-dawn gloom. Had to wait until the security sweep finished, he whispered, glancing over his shoulder. His usual confident demeanor was gone, replaced by nervous energy. He pulled 2 small drives from his jacket pocket. Someone's already removing files. Started late last night, whole chunks of footage, just vanishing. Jada's hands were steady as she took the drives, but her heart raced. How much is left? Enough. Multiple angles of the parking lot incident, plus 6 months of hallway feeds. He checked his watch. But we need to hurry. Admin starts arriving at 7. Mrs. Price is waiting in her car, Jada said, tucking the drives securely into her bag. We've got a plan. Coach Mallory nodded, then hesitated. Jada, He swallowed hard. Just be careful, okay? Some people in this town, they don't play fair. Neither do I, Jada replied, thinking of Caleb alone in detention. Not anymore. She slipped out from under the bleachers, jogging across the dewy grass to where Mrs. Price's ancient Buick idled at the service entrance. The sky was just beginning to lighten, painting the clouds in shades of purple and gray. Got them? Mrs. Price asked, as Jada slid into the passenger seat. Her normally perfect hair was hidden under a casual baseball cap, part of their plan to blend in with early morning campus staff. 2 more drives. Jada pulled them out. But Coach says files are disappearing. Then we'd better not waste time. Mrs. Price shifted into drive, following the maintenance road toward the media building. My old student ID still works on the back door. They never did update those systems properly. The campus was eerily quiet, empty, except for a few groundskeepers starting their morning rounds. Mrs. Price parked behind the media lab, positioning the car to block security cameras. They moved quickly, using her ancient ID to slip in through the service entrance. Inside, the lab hummed with sleeping computers. Jada's fingers flew across the keyboard of the main workstation, bringing it to life while Mrs. Price kept watch at the door. "Starting the first clone now," Jada murmured, connecting one of the drives. Progress bars crawled across the screen as files copied. "These machines are so slow." "Can't be helped," Mrs. Price replied, peering through the door's narrow window. "Just be thorough. We need perfect copies." Minutes ticked by like hours. Jada created multiple backups of each drive, checking and double-checking the file integrity. Outside, the sky grew steadily brighter. "Car just pulled into the faculty lot," Mrs. Price warned. "Blue sedan. Looks like administration." "Almost done." Jada's fingers never stopped moving, labeling each backup with precise timestamps. 2 minutes. She was disconnecting the final drive when voices echoed in the hallway. Mrs. Price motioned her to freeze as footsteps approached, then passed by. They waited another 30 seconds before Jada quickly shut down the computer, wiping any trace of their work. They slipped out the same way they'd entered, walking unhurriedly to the car like they belonged there. The morning sun was fully up now, casting long shadows across the campus. "Next stop, my office," Mrs. Price said as they drove away. "Need to catalog everything properly before the handoff." They spent the next several hours in Mrs. Price's home office, documenting every file, creating detailed indexes, and preparing certified copies. The work was tedious but crucial, building an unbreakable chain of evidence. "Remember what I taught you about presentation?" Mrs. Price asked as they worked. "Evidence is only as good as your ability to authenticate it," Jada finished, carefully labeling another folder. Everything documented, witnessed, and time-stamped. Around noon, they broke for a quick lunch, sandwiches eaten over case files and legal pads. Mrs. Price's dining room table had become a command center, covered in papers and laptops. "Time to move these somewhere safer," Mrs. Price said, gathering the most crucial files into her briefcase. "My old paralegal Marcus. He's got a secure storage system that would make the FBI jealous." They drove across town to a small law office tucked between a bakery and a bookstore. Marcus, gray-haired but sharp-eyed, met them at the door. "Ruby," he greeted Mrs. Price warmly. "Been a while since you brought me anything this interesting." Inside his office, Marcus examined their documentation with professional scrutiny, nodding approvingly at their thoroughness. He input security codes on a wall safe that looked new enough to belong in a bank. "Nobody accesses these without both my authorization and a court order," he assured them, securing the drives and documents. "And I mean nobody." As they walked back to the car, Jada's phone buzzed. A message from Truth Trek lit up the screen. Segment confirmed for 7 p.m. Title, "Hidden Hand in Beaumont Crossing." Sending final questions shortly. Mrs. Price read the message over Jada's shoulder and smiled. "Perfect timing. Now we've got backup copies safe. Let them try to bury the truth." The afternoon sun blazed through the courthouse windows as Jada sat rigid in the cramped hearing room. Her school uniform felt stiff and uncomfortable after hours of waiting. Beside her, Mama D clutched her worn leather purse, knuckles white with tension. Caleb stood before the judge in his detention jumpsuit, looking smaller than his 13 years. His shoulders hunched forward, as if trying to disappear. "Given the complexity of new evidence submitted to this court," Judge Martinez announced, adjusting her reading glasses, "I am postponing final judgment until Monday morning." "But, Your Honor!" Mrs. Price rose from her seat, voice steady but urgent. "My client is a minor being held without proper cause. The initial charge itself is questionable at best." The judge held up her hand. "I understand your concerns, Mrs. Price. However, the prosecution has submitted additional materials that require thorough review." She glanced at her watch. "Court is adjourned until 9 a.m. Monday." The bang of the gavel echoed through the room. Caleb's shoulders slumped further as a guard stepped forward to escort him back to detention. "Stay strong, baby," Mama D called out. "We're right here." Caleb managed a weak smile before disappearing through the side door. Jada was already on her feet, gathering her things. "Go," Mrs. Price whispered. "Get everything ready. I'll handle the paperwork here." Jada burst out of the courthouse into the late afternoon heat. Her feet pounded against the sidewalk as she ran the 12 blocks home, ignoring the curious stares from passers-by. Her lungs burned, but she didn't slow down. By the time she reached Mrs. Price's house, people were already gathering. Miss Johnson from the corner store, Mr. Washington, who ran the barber shop, the Robinson twins from church. They filed into Mrs. Price's den, carrying covered dishes and worried expressions. The old Zenith TV dominated one corner of the room, its rabbit ears wrapped in foil. Mama D arrived just as Jada was adjusting the antenna for better reception. "Brought my sweet potato pie," she announced, setting it on the coffee table. Stress always makes people hungry. More neighbors squeezed in. Someone turned on the ceiling fan, but it barely stirred the humid air. The clock on the wall ticked toward 7. 5 minutes, Jada said, checking her phone. The Truth Trek podcast logo filled the TV screen, followed by the show's familiar opening music. The host's face appeared, serious behind thick-rimmed glasses. "Tonight, we examine a disturbing pattern of racial intimidation and institutional cover-ups in the small Texas town of Beaumont Crossing." The room fell silent, except for the soft whir of the fan. On screen, security footage played in crisp detail. Tripp and his cousins surrounding Caleb, their aggression clear, even without audio. Then came the phone videos, showing multiple angles of the confrontation. "The following clips have been authenticated by forensic experts," the host explained. Timestamps appeared in the corner of each frame, creating an undeniable timeline of events. Mrs. Washington gasped as they watched Tripp force Caleb to his knees. Mr. Robinson muttered something under his breath. But when the unedited footage showed Tripp deliberately spilling milk before shoving Caleb down, the whole room erupted. "There it is," Miss Johnson pointed at the screen. "Clear as day." The segment continued, methodically dismantling the official narrative. Documents flashed across the screen. Past complaints against the Whitmore boys, buried incident reports, patterns of selective enforcement. Jada's phone started buzzing with notifications. Social media was exploding. Justice for Caleb started trending locally, then regionally. Video clips were being shared thousands of times. Halfway through the broadcast, Mrs. Price burst through the door, waving her phone. "They're releasing him! Judge Martinez issued an emergency order." The room erupted in cheers. Mama D dabbed at her eyes with a tissue. "Thank you, Jesus," she whispered. "I'll drive," Mr. Washington offered, already reaching for his keys. "We can pick him up right now." 30 minutes later, they pulled up to the juvenile detention center. Caleb stood outside with a social worker, still in his jumpsuit, but clutching his release papers. When he saw Mama D, he ran straight into her arms. "My baby," she hugged him tight, rocking slightly. "My brave, brave boy." Jada wrapped her arms around them both, feeling Caleb's shoulders shake with silent tears. Around them, their small group of supporters formed a protective circle. Across town, in her wood-paneled office, Mayor Whitmore was already in damage control mode. Her elegant desk was covered in phones, all lines blinking. A dozen of Beaumont Crossing's wealthiest citizens sat in leather chairs, their faces grim. "This changes nothing," she assured them, her voice sharp despite her perfect smile. "We simply need to adjust our strategy." But her perfectly manicured nails drummed against the desk, the only sign that her confidence might be cracking. Saturday morning dawned crisp and clear. Jada moved through her northern Shaolin forms in the community dojo's front room, bare feet silent on worn mats. Early sunlight streamed through the high windows, catching dust motes in golden beams. Her muscles flowed from one position to the next. Snake creeps down, white crane spreads wings, cross hands. The familiar movements helped quiet her mind after yesterday's emotional roller coaster. Here, at least, everything made sense. Every action had a clear purpose and consequence. Master Chen watched from his usual spot by the tea station, nodding occasionally. At 72, he rarely demonstrated forms anymore, but his eyes missed nothing. "Your breathing is tense," he commented. "Center yourself." Jada adjusted her breath, letting it flow deeper into her belly. She was halfway through Golden Rooster stands on one leg when the dojo's front door burst open. Coach Mallory stumbled in, his usual confident stride replaced by jerky movements. His polo shirt was wrinkled, and dark circles shadowed his eyes. He looked like he hadn't slept. "Jada," he called out, voice hoarse. "I need to talk to you. Now." She held her stance for 3 more breaths, then bowed to Master Chen before stepping off the mat. Up close, Coach Mallory looked even worse. His hands trembled slightly as he ran them through his disheveled hair. "What's wrong?" Jada asked, grabbing her water bottle. "You look terrible." He glanced around the empty dojo. Master Chen had disappeared into the back office, giving them privacy. "They came to my house last night. 2 guys I've never seen before, but they knew things. Things about my gambling debts." Jada's stomach clenched. "What guys?" "Said they worked for Mayor Whitmore." Coach Mallory's voice dropped to a whisper. "They knew exactly how much I owe, who I owe it to. Said they could make it all go away, or make it much, much worse." "What did they want?" He slumped against the wall. "The original security drives, the masters I pulled from the locker room system. They knew I had them hidden at home." "But we already copied those files," Jada said. "Truth Trek aired them last night. They didn't care about the copies. They wanted the originals, the only ones that could prove chain of custody in court. Technical metadata that shows exactly when and where the footage was recorded." His hands were shaking harder now. "I had to give them up, Jada. They said they'd destroy me if I didn't." Jada's mind raced. Without the original drives, proving the footage's authenticity would be much harder. Copies could be questioned, dismissed as potentially altered. "Did they threaten you physically?" she asked. Coach Mallory shook his head. "They didn't have to. One of them just pulled out his phone and showed me pictures. Me placing bets, meeting with loan sharks. Then he showed me pictures of my daughter at college softball practice." He pressed his palms against his eyes. "God, I'm so sorry, Jada. I never meant to let you down like this." Before she could respond, the dojo's door chimed again. A thin man in a cheap suit entered, carrying a leather briefcase. "Jada Hollis?" he called out, scanning the room. "Yes?" He strode forward, extending a thick envelope. "You've been served. This is a formal notice of legal action for defamation, filed by the Whitmore family against you, Truth Trek Media, and all associated parties." The envelope felt heavy in Jada's hands. Through the window behind the process server, she could see a news van pulling up outside. The local channel's logo was emblazoned on its side. Her phone buzzed. It was Mrs. Price, sending a screenshot of the morning news headlines. "Questionable Kung Fu Tale. Local teens claims under scrutiny." Below it, another headline read, "Mayor Whitmore demands retraction of malicious falsehoods." The ground seemed to tilt beneath Jada's feet. Just yesterday, they'd had solid proof. Now the original evidence was gone, and the story was already being rewritten. Coach Mallory touched her shoulder gently. "I'll testify about what happened last night. Tell everyone how they strong-armed me." But they both knew it wouldn't be enough. His gambling problems would destroy his credibility. Without the original drives, it would be his word against theirs. The news van's satellite dish was extending upward now. Through the dojo's windows, Jada could see the reporter doing her makeup, preparing to go live. Master Chen emerged from his office, moving with deliberate calm. He took in the scene, the process server retreating through the door, Coach Mallory's defeated posture, the growing media circus outside. "Perhaps," he said quietly, "it is time to review the lesson of bend like bamboo." Jada nodded, recognizing the teaching. Bamboo survived storms by bending without breaking, always ready to spring back stronger. But as she watched another news van park across the street, she wondered if all the martial arts wisdom in the world would be enough to counter the Whitmores' next move. The afternoon sun cast long shadows through Mrs. Price's study as Jada paced the worn carpet. Her fingers traced the edges of the lawsuit papers for the 100th time. Coach Mallory's betrayal still stung, but something else nagged at her, a detail she couldn't quite grasp. Caleb sat cross-legged on the floor, his laptop balanced on his knees. He hadn't spoken much since his release, but his fingers flew over the keyboard with fierce determination. "The S school uses Cloud Secure for everything," he said suddenly, breaking the silence. "Be backups, emails, security logs. It's all there." Jada paused her pacing. "What are you thinking?" "I could." He hesitated, then rushed ahead. "I could get in. Find the original files before they delete everything." "Hack the school?" Jada's eyes widened. "That's illegal, Caleb." "So is destroying evidence," he countered. His stutter vanished when he talked tech. "They're counting on us playing by the rules while they break them all. And I already know the network's weak spots from my robotics club work." Mrs. Price looked up from her legal briefs. "I cannot advise or endorse any unauthorized access to computer systems." She adjusted her reading glasses. "However, I will step into the kitchen to make a fresh pot of coffee. I may be gone for, about 30 minutes. After she left, Jada sank down beside her brother. "Walk me through it. What exactly could you find?" "Everything gets backed up to the cloud automatically. Even if they wipe the local drives, there should be copies." His fingers tapped a rapid rhythm on the laptop case. "Plus, the system logs would show who accessed what files and when. If someone tried to delete evidence, we'd know." Jada thought of Coach Mallory's haunted face, of the smug headlines twisting their story. Playing fair hadn't worked. Following the rules had only given their opponents time to bury the truth. How long would it take? Maybe a few hours. I've been mapping the network for months. Just for fun, you know? A ghost of his old smile flickered. "I never thought I'd actually need to use it." Thunder rumbled in the distance as Jada wrestled with the decision. Breaking the law, even for the right reasons, went against everything she believed in. But watching Caleb's determined expression, she remembered him kneeling in that milk puddle, remembered the helpless fury as they led him away in handcuffs. "Do it," she said finally. "But be careful. If you think anyone's tracking you, I know how to cover my tracks." He was already typing, screens of code reflecting in his glasses. "Nobody will even know we were there." The storm drew closer as Caleb worked, thunder growing louder. Jada brought him water and snacks, watching in amazement as her little brother transformed. Gone was the nervous kid who stuttered under pressure. In his place sat a focused technician, muttering about encryption keys and access protocols. "I'm in," he announced after 2 hours. "But there's something weird. A hidden directory with restricted permissions. What's in it?" "Incident reports. Hundreds of them, going back years." His voice grew excited. "Look at this. Complaints against the Whitmores. All marked sealed by administrative action." Jada leaned closer. The screen showed page after page of PDF files, each labeled with dates and case numbers. As Caleb opened them, a pattern emerged. Students reporting harassment by Tripp and his cousins. Witnesses to bullying incidents. Even a few teacher complaints, all buried in digital obscurity. "They've been covering for them for years," Jada breathed. "Download everything." Lightning flashed outside as Caleb copied the files. Each crack of thunder made them jump, but he kept working. The printer hummed steadily, spitting out page after damning page. Mrs. Price returned as they sorted the documents into manila folders. She examined a few pages, her expression grim. "This shows a clear pattern of institutional protection. The school board would have had to actively suppress these complaints. And the mayor's signature is on half the sealing orders," Jada noted. "It's not just about Tripp anymore. The whole system is corrupt." Caleb finished labeling the last folder. "What do we do with all this?" Thunder rattled the windows as Jada stacked the evidence into her backpack. Through the study's bay window, she could see the courthouse dome silhouetted against the stormy sky. "Tomorrow," she said, "everyone sees this." A brilliant fork of lightning illuminated the courthouse's classical facade, its pillars stark white against the dark clouds. For a moment, the building seemed to glow from within, as if truth itself was trying to break free. Mrs. Price began organizing copies, her movements precise and purposeful. The room fell quiet, except for shuffling papers and rolling thunder. They worked steadily, racing against both the storm and time itself, knowing that tomorrow would change everything. The old grandfather clock in the hall struck midnight as they finished. Jada zipped her backpack carefully, feeling the weight of truth inside. Through the window, another lightning flash caught the courthouse dome, and she thought of justice, not the sanitized version the Whitmores preferred, but real justice, raw and undeniable as the storm itself. The Civic Center's main hall buzzed with tension. Every folding chair was filled, and people lined the walls 3 deep, fanning themselves against the stuffy heat. News vans crowded the parking lot outside, their satellite dishes reaching skyward like metal flowers. Jada stood at the back, her backpack heavy with evidence. Mrs. Price squeezed her arm gently. "Remember," she whispered, "stay calm no matter what. That's how they'll try to discredit you, by making you look unstable." "I know." Jada's fingers traced the zipper of her backpack. She'd dressed deliberately today. Crisp white blouse, neat black skirt, hair pulled back severely. Nothing that could be labeled threatening. At the podium, Mayor Whitmore tapped the microphone. "Thank you all for coming to this emergency session. In light of recent disruptions to our community's peace, Chief Whitmore will address some concerning rumors." Phones throughout the crowd tilted up as the chief approached the podium. He cut an imposing figure in his dress uniform, medals gleaming under the fluorescent lights. "Good afternoon," he began, voice practiced and smooth. "I know many of you have seen various social media posts claiming misconduct by our youth. Let me be clear. These allegations are not only false, but dangerous." Murmurs rippled through the crowd. Jada spotted Luna near the front, phone held high. Live streaming. Perfect. "What we have here," the chief continued, "is a disturbing pattern of escalation by certain individuals who refuse to accept the proper channels of authority. They spread doctored videos, make unfounded accusations, and even resort to violence." "That's a lie." Jada's voice carried clearly across the hall. Heads turned as she moved forward, each step measured and deliberate. "And I can prove it." Chief Whitmore's expression hardened. "Young lady, this is not an open forum. Please return to your seat." "No." Jada kept walking, pulling papers from her backpack. "Everyone needs to see this. Years of covered-up complaints against your son and nephews, your signature on the suppression orders, the real security footage you tried to destroy." "Security!" the chief barked. "Remove her!" But Jada was already halfway to the podium, holding the documents high. "It's all here! Dated, signed, and verified. Your whole system of protection for bullies and racists." Phones swiveled to follow her. The live stream count on Luna's screen ticked up rapidly. 100, thousands, tens of thousands. "This is your final warning," Chief Whitmore growled. His hand moved to his belt. "What are you afraid of?" Jada demanded. "The truth, that everyone will finally see." The chief's hand slammed a red button on the podium. Instantly, piercing alarms filled the air. Emergency strobes cast wild shadows as people jumped up in confusion. "Active threat protocol!" Whitmore shouted over the noise. "Clear the building!" Before Jada could react, 2 officers tackled her from behind. Her papers scattered across the floor as they drove her to the ground. She didn't resist. She'd expected this. Instead, she turned her face toward Luna's camera and spoke clearly. "Check the school's cloud-secure archives. It's all there. They can't hide it any—" A hand roughly turned her head as cold metal clicked around her wrists. Through the chaos, she glimpsed Luna's phone screen. The viewer count had exploded. Comments and shares flooded in faster than they could load. "Stand with Jada" flashed past again and again. But mixed with the support, doubt crept in. "Another troublemaker playing victim," one comment read. "If she had proof, why not go through proper channels?" asked another. They hauled her to her feet. Chief Whitmore stood at the podium, projecting calm authority as he addressed the cameras. "As you can see, this is exactly the kind of disruptive behavior we've been dealing with. Rest assured, we will maintain order in Beaumont Crossing." Mrs. Price's voice cut through the noise. "I am her lawyer. You have no grounds for this arrest." But they were already moving Jada toward the exit. She caught glimpses of faces in the crowd, some shocked, some satisfied, some simply turning away. Her evidence lay scattered and trampled on the floor. Through the glass doors, she saw more police cars arriving, lights flashing. News reporters shoved microphones forward, shouting questions. The scene felt surreal, like something from a movie. Just before they pushed her into a cruiser, Jada locked eyes with Luna, who was still filming. She gave a slight nod. The truth was out there now, spreading through the digital ether. They could handcuff her, but they couldn't stop what was coming. The car door slammed. Through the window, Jada watched the Civic Center recede, its American flag hanging limp in the humid air. Her wrists ached from the cuffs, but she sat straight, face composed. Let them film that too. A 16-year-old girl, calm and dignified, being arrested for daring to speak truth to power. On phones and screens across the world, her story was already taking flight, sparking debates and divisions. Some called her a hero, others a troublemaker. Stand with Jada trended higher by the minute, even as skeptics picked apart her claims. But Jada knew this was just one move in a longer game. The truth was, like water, it would find its way out, no matter how many dams they built to contain it. The holding cell's fluorescent lights buzzed like angry wasps, flickering every few minutes to cast strange shadows on the bare concrete walls. Jada sat on the thin plastic mattress, her back pressed against the cold cinder blocks, trying to keep her breathing steady like she did before tournaments. But this wasn't a competition. This was real, and she was alone. Her white blouse, carefully pressed this morning, was now wrinkled and dirty from being tackled to the ground. One sleeve was torn at the cuff. She'd been allowed to remove her hair tie during processing, and now her braids hung loose around her face, providing a small curtain of privacy from the camera mounted in the corner. Breathe in for 4 counts, hold for 4, release for 4. She whispered to herself, repeating the calming technique her kung fu master had taught her. But her mind kept replaying the town hall scene, her evidence scattered across the floor, phones recording her arrest, Chief Whitmore's satisfied smirk as they dragged her away. The cell was small, maybe 8 by 10 feet, with a steel toilet in one corner and a small metal sink. Every sound echoed: the drip of the leaky faucet, the squeak of rubber soles on concrete as guards passed by, the distant slam of heavy doors. A wave of despair threatened to overwhelm her. What if she'd miscalculated? What if going public had only made things worse? Caleb was safe for now, but what about tomorrow? And their father, still serving time on trumped-up charges. Had she just proved everyone right about their troublemaker family? The lights flickered again, longer this time, plunging the cell into darkness for several heartbeats before sputtering back to life. Jada pulled her knees to her chest, making herself small like she used to do during thunderstorms as a child. But she wasn't a child anymore. She was 16, and she'd chosen this fight. "Stay strong, stay focused," she muttered, but her voice cracked on the words. The sound of boots approaching made her straighten up. A guard appeared, Officer Martinez, the only one who'd shown her any kindness during processing. She held a folded piece of paper. "Message for you," Martinez said quietly, passing the note through the food slot. "Your lawyer's coming at 3. Jada's fingers trembled slightly as she unfolded the paper. Mrs. Price's elegant handwriting filled the small square. "Hold fast. Help is coming. Remember Fannie Lou Hamer? We've been in darker cells than this." Fresh tears pricked at Jada's eyes, but these were different from the ones she'd been fighting back all night. Mrs. Price hadn't abandoned her. She wasn't alone. The next hours crawled by like molasses. Jada forced herself to move, going through simple qi-gong exercises to keep her blood flowing and her mind clear. Horse stance, bow stance, cat stance, holding each position until her muscles burned, then flowing into the next. The familiar movements helped center her, even in this unfamiliar space. She thought about all the civil rights activists who'd sat in cells like this one, not just the famous names from textbooks, but the countless others whose stories were never recorded. How many had felt this same mix of fear and determination? How many had wondered if their sacrifice would matter? At 2:45 a.m., the lights flickered again. Jada stopped her exercises, using her sleeve to wipe the sweat from her forehead. Her body ached from the concrete floor and the earlier rough handling, but she refused to let it show in her posture. Officer Martinez returned at 2:55 a.m. "Your lawyer's here. Come on." The handcuffs felt colder this time as they clicked around her wrists. Jada kept her head high as Martinez led her through empty corridors to the attorney meeting room. The fluorescent lights were just as harsh here, but they didn't flicker. Mrs. Price sat at the metal table, her silver hair gleaming, back straight despite the late hour. She wore her court suit, navy blue with a crisp white collar, and her reading glasses hung from a chain around her neck. The sight of her familiar, dignified presence made Jada's throat tight. "Those handcuffs aren't necessary, officer," Mrs. Price said firmly. "My client is a 16-year-old honor student, not a dangerous criminal." To Jada's surprise, Martinez nodded and removed the cuffs without argument. "I'll be outside," she said, closing the door behind her. "Sit down, child," Mrs. Price said softly. "You look exhausted." Jada sank into the metal chair, rubbing her wrists. "I'm okay. I'm not sure if I did the right thing anymore. Maybe I should have waited, found another way." "No." Mrs. Price's voice was gentle but firm. "You did exactly what needed to be done. And now I have something to show you." She opened her briefcase and removed a thick manila envelope, yellowed with age. "This is why I needed to wait until tonight, when certain eyes weren't watching." The first hints of dawn were beginning to show through the barred window, painting the room's east wall in shades of pale gold. Mrs. Price carefully extracted a document from the envelope, its pages brittle with time. "This," she said, "is a federal injunction from 1971, never rescinded. Proves systemic abuse of power and civil rights violations, and Beaumont Crossing falls under direct federal receivership." The door to the attorney meeting room swung open without warning. Mayor Judith Whitmore strode in, her heels clicking sharply against the concrete floor. Despite the early hour, she looked immaculate in a cream-colored suit, her silver-streaked hair perfectly styled. "Good morning, ladies," the mayor said, her smile practiced and cool. "I hope I'm not interrupting." Mrs. Price's expression hardened. "This is a privileged attorney-client meeting." "Oh, I've cleared it with the duty judge." Mayor Whitmore pulled out the third chair and sat down, smoothing her skirt. "I'm here to offer an olive branch." Jada stayed silent, studying the woman who'd helped orchestrate her family's harassment. Up close, she could see the careful makeup covering dark circles under the mayor's eyes. Someone else had been having a long night, too. "Beaumont Crossing is hurting," Mayor Whitmore continued. "Social media wars, protests brewing, neighbors divided. We need healing. Unity." She leaned forward, focusing on Jada. "That's where you come in." "My client isn't interested in being your propaganda piece," Mrs. Price said firmly. "Hear me out." The mayor's smile never wavered. "Next Saturday is our annual Founders' Day Festival. The centerpiece this year will be a martial arts exhibition featuring local talent. Imagine it. You performing your forms before the whole town, showing everyone that skill and discipline transcend all boundaries." Jada's jaw tightened. "You want me to put on a show? After everything your family's done?" "I want to give you a platform," Mayor Whitmore corrected. "And in exchange, you walk out of here today. All charges dropped. Caleb's record completely expunged." Mrs. Price started to object, but Jada touched her arm. "What exactly would this exhibition involve?" "A 15-minute demonstration of your choosing. Northern Shaolin forms, as I understand it." The mayor's eyes gleamed. "Show our community what real martial arts look like, not the edited clips floating around online. We'll have proper lighting, professional cameras, live streaming. And afterward?" Jada asked quietly. "Afterward, we all move forward. No more dwelling on unfortunate incidents or misunderstandings." Mayor Whitmore stood, brushing invisible lint from her sleeve. "Think about it. But don't think too long. The festival's in 6 days." She walked to the door, then paused. "Oh, and naturally, this conversation never happened. Official channels only from here on out." With another practiced smile, she was gone. Mrs. Price waited until the clicking heels faded before speaking. "It's a trap." "Of course it is." Jada's voice was steady. "But it's also an opportunity. Child, they're trying to control the narrative. Put you on display like some circus act to prove there's no real problem here." "I know." Jada straightened in her chair. "But they're giving us exactly what we need. A spotlight." Mrs. Price studied her face for a long moment. "You're planning something." "Maybe." Jada allowed herself a small smile. "But first, I need to get out of here. Can the fluorescent lights in Mrs. Price's office hummed as Jada, Caleb, and the attorney gathered around the oak conference table. Stacks of legal documents and technical diagrams covered every inch of the surface. A wall clock ticked steadily, marking time until Saturday's showdown. "Let's go through this one more time," Mrs. Price said, adjusting her reading glasses. "Every role needs to be crystal clear." Caleb pulled out his laptop, fingers flying across the keyboard. "I've mapped the festival grounds Wi-Fi networks. 3 access points we can use for backup streams if the main connection gets cut." He reached into his backpack and produced a pair of ordinary-looking glasses. "These look normal, but they've got a micro camera built into the bridge." He handed them to Jada. Try them on. Jada slipped the glasses onto her face. They felt slightly heavier than regular frames, but not enough to be noticeable. How's the fit? Perfect. Caleb tapped a few keys. The camera's streaming now. Look around the room. On his screen, a crystal-clear video feed showed Mrs. Price's office from Jada's perspective. Every document, every face, every detail captured in high definition. The feed goes straight to an encrypted cloud server, Caleb explained. Even if they grab the glasses, they can't stop the upload. And I've got 3 backup locations copying everything in real time. Mrs. Price nodded approvingly. What about audio? Built-in microphone near the earpiece. Range is about 20 feet for clear voice pickup. A soft knock interrupted them. Coach Mallory slipped inside, still in his coaching gear, looking haunted. Dark circles ringed his eyes, and his usual confident posture was gone. I had to come, he said quietly. What I did, helping them cover this up. I can't live with it. Mrs. Price gestured to an empty chair. Sit down, Samuel. You're doing the right thing now. The coach sank into the chair. They've got me by the throat with these gambling debts, but seeing what they did to these kids. He looked at Jada and Caleb. I'm ready to tell everything. Caleb produced another device from his bag, a slim wire with a flesh-colored adhesive patch. This will record everything during the festival. The battery lasts 12 hours. Coach Mallory took the wire with trembling hands. Where do I wear it? Under your shirt collar, Caleb demonstrated. The adhesive patch goes on your chest. Just remember not to shower with it on Saturday morning. The coach nodded. What exactly do you need me to record? Everything, Mrs. Price said firmly. Every conversation, every instruction from the mayor or the chief. But most importantly, stay close to Tripp and his cousins before Jada's demonstration. We need to catch whatever they're planning. A quiet knock pattern, 3 short, 2 long, signaled the arrival of State Trooper Martinez and her partner. They entered silently, closing the door behind them. The warrants are signed and sealed, Martinez reported, patting her jacket pocket. Judge Henderson was very interested in the evidence packet we showed him. Her partner added, We'll have plainclothes officers scattered through the crowd. First sign of trouble? We move. Jada stood, stretching muscles tight from sitting. I need to practice. The demonstration has to look perfect, or they'll know something's wrong. Go, Mrs. Price waved her toward the door. But be careful at the dojo. They're probably watching. Dawn found Jada in the community center's back lot, working with a heavy sandbag. Sweat darkened her t-shirt as she practiced chi-na holds, martial arts techniques designed to control without injury. Each movement had to be precise, each lock perfectly placed. The sandbag swung. Jada caught it, redirecting its momentum into a joint lock that would immobilize but not harm. Again and again she drilled, until every motion was muscle memory. Across town, festival workers raised banners and assembled stages. Sound technicians tested speakers while vendors set up booths. Mayor Whitmore stood at the main platform, rehearsing her speech about unity and progress. Together, we prove that Beaumont Crossing stands united, she practiced, unaware of the sealed warrants waiting to be served. In Mrs. Price's office, Caleb ran final checks on all the streaming connections. Coach Mallory tested his wire, voice shaking as he recorded a detailed confession about the mayor's role in the cover-up. State troopers memorized positions and signals. The afternoon sun began its slow arc toward the horizon. Jada stood in front of her mirror at home, making sure every detail was perfect. Her white dress shirt, freshly pressed. Black pleated skirt, knife-edge creases sharp. Hair pulled back in a tight, neat ponytail. The camera glasses settled perfectly on her nose. She touched the small scar on her knee from childhood kung fu training. Years of discipline, thousands of hours of practice had prepared her for this moment. Not just the physical techniques, but the mental focus, the ability to stay calm in chaos. The festival grounds hummed with anticipation as hundreds gathered around the main stage. Colored banners fluttered in the late afternoon breeze, and the scent of carnival food drifted through the air. Mayor Whitmore stood at the podium, her practiced smile gleaming under the bright lights. And now, demonstrating the spirit of unity that makes our town special, please welcome Jada Hollis, performing traditional Northern Shaolin Kung Fu. Jada stepped onto the stage, her white shirt crisp against the black mat. The camera glasses sat perfectly on her nose, their hidden lens capturing everything. She took her opening stance, feet planted firmly, hands positioned with practiced precision. The first movements flowed like water. Palm strikes cut through the air with controlled power. Her kicks traced elegant arcs, each landing silent and sure. The crowd leaned forward, phones raised high to record what looked like a flawless performance. Mrs. Price watched from the front row, her hand resting near her phone. Behind her, plainclothes state troopers blended with the audience. Coach Mallory stood near the stage steps, wire hidden beneath his collar, recording every sound. "Beautiful form," someone whispered. "So graceful." Jada transitioned into a more complex sequence, her ponytail swinging as she spun. Each technique was deliberately chosen, moves that could easily adapt from demonstration to defense. She'd practiced this routine for hours, knowing it might become something else entirely. The MC's voice cut through the music. And now, joining our talented performer, 3 special guests to demonstrate the power of teamwork. Please welcome Tripp, Derek, and Sloan Whitmore. The 3 boys bounded onto the stage in their signature red varsity jackets. They carried what looked like standard martial arts props, wooden poles and practice weapons. But Jada's trained eye caught the metallic glint of collapsible batons hidden among them. Caleb, monitoring the live stream from his hidden position, zoomed the camera feed on their hands. The footage clearly showed the illegal weapons. The twins spread out to her sides while Tripp moved to face her. Their practiced smirks couldn't hide the tension in their shoulders, the predatory shift in their stance. The audience, still expecting a choreographed routine, didn't notice how the boys had boxed Jada in. She continued her form, every sense alert. The festival lights caught the sweat beginning to bead on Tripp's forehead. Derek's fingers twitched near his hidden baton. Sloane's breathing had quickened. The attack came with a synchronized metallic snap, as 3 batons extended to full length. Tripp lunged first, swinging for her head with killing force. The crowd's collective gasp was drowned out by the sharp crack of Jada's palm heel strike meeting the baton's shaft. The weapon shattered, fragments spinning through the air. Tripp's eyes widened in shock as his momentum carried him forward. Jada stepped aside, letting him stumble past. Sloane charged from the left, baton whistling toward her ribs. Jada's hand shot out, catching his wrist. Her fingers found pressure points as she turned, using his own forward drive to guide him into a controlled fall. His shoulder and hip hit the mat with a solid thud, the baton clattering away. Derek's wild swing came next, all rage and no technique. Jada slipped inside his guard, one hand deflecting the baton while the other gripped his jacket. Her foot swept his legs as she turned, converting his aggressive energy into a smooth flip that landed him flat on his back. The entire sequence took less than 10 seconds. Jada stood unruffled at the stage's center, her white shirt still pristine. 3 varsity jackets lay sprawled around her, their owners groaning but unhurt. Shocked silence fell over the crowd. Then someone shouted, "They tried to jump her! Those were real weapons! Someone call the police!" The festival's security team started pushing through the crowd. Mayor Whitmore gripped the podium, her composed facade cracking as she watched her carefully orchestrated plan dissolve. Coach Mallory's voice came through clear on the wire. "Did you see that? They brought weapons, just like the mayor said they would." It was all planned. Phones throughout the audience captured video from every angle. Caleb's live stream had already drawn thousands of viewers. The truth was spreading faster than any damage control could contain it. Jada maintained her stance, breathing steady and controlled. Her eyes met Mrs. Price's, who gave an almost imperceptible nod. Around the stage, plainclothes officers began moving into position. The festival lights blazed overhead, illuminating a scene far different from the Unity exhibition promised in the mayor's program. Instead of a choreographed performance, the cameras had captured an attempted assault and the undeniable evidence of who had truly initiated the violence. Through the festival's speaker system, Mayor Whitmore's voice crackled with barely contained rage. "Finish the girl! End this now!" The command echoed across the fairgrounds, bouncing off food trucks and carnival rides. On the massive screens flanking the stage, Caleb's live stream instantly replayed the mayor's words. The crowd's shocked murmurs grew into outraged shouts as they realized the full scope of the setup. "Did you all hear that?" Coach Mallory's voice boomed through the speakers, his wire picking up every word crystal clear. "The mayor just ordered an attack on a student. This whole thing was a trap." State troopers emerged from the crowd like shadows taking form. Their badges caught the festival lights as they converged on the stage from all directions. Mayor Whitmore's face drained of color as two officers approached the podium, handcuffs glinting. "Judith Whitmore, you're under arrest for conspiracy to commit assault, abuse of office, and civil rights violations," the lead trooper announced, his voice carrying across the now silent grounds. Across the fairgrounds, more officers moved toward Chief Whitmore, who had been watching from near the cotton candy stand. His hand twitched toward his service weapon, but he thought better of it as three troopers surrounded him. "Don't make this worse, Chief," one said quietly, already reaching for her cuffs. On stage, Trip Whitmore's face contorted with fury as he watched his family's power crumbling. With a guttural roar, he charged at Jada again, abandoning any pretense of a demonstration. His fingers were curved into claws, reaching for her throat. Jada's response was poetry in motion. She pivoted on her back foot, her body coiling like a spring. As Trip lunged past her center line, she unleashed a textbook butterfly kick. Her lead leg swept up in a crescent, followed by her trailing leg in a fluid, circular motion. Both feet connected in rapid succession, breaking Trip's balance and sending him airborne. He crashed down hard, but tried to scramble up again. Jada was already moving. She flowed behind him, her hands finding the precise pressure points along his shoulder and arm. With careful precision, she applied a textbook chin-na hold, controlling his joint without causing injury. Trip froze, caught in the submission technique straight from the Northern Shaolin manual. "This is a competition legal restraint," Jada announced clearly, her voice carrying. "No permanent damage, just control. Unlike what you planned for me." Uniformed officers rushed forward to take custody of Trip. As they secured his wrists with handcuffs, the first firework exploded overhead, sending silver sparkles cascading across the darkening sky. The timing was almost comical. The festival's planned celebration becoming an impromptu light show for justice being served. More fireworks burst above them, red, gold, and blue starbursts that illuminated the scene below. The crowd's cheers swelled with each explosion, drowning out even the thunderous pyrotechnics. Parents lifted children onto their shoulders for a better view. Phones recorded everything, live streams carrying the moment across social media. Derek and Sloan, still nursing their bruised egos and bodies from Jada's earlier defense, were quietly taken into custody. Their red varsity jackets, once symbols of untouchable privilege, now looked garish under the festival lights and flashing police units. Mrs. Price stood at the stage's edge, her phone still recording as she spoke with state investigators. Coach Mallory removed his hidden wire, handling it carefully to preserve the evidence. Caleb emerged from his hiding spot, laptop tucked under his arm, a satisfied smile playing at his lips. The festival grounds, which had been decorated with banners proclaiming unity through tradition, now hosted a different kind of unity. Black and white residents stood shoulder to shoulder, their cheers mixing together as they watched decades of corruption finally face consequences. Near the lemonade stand, Mama D dabbed at her eyes with a handkerchief. "Lord, if your father could see this," she whispered, pulling both grandchildren close when they reached her. "He will," Jada said firmly. "We'll show him the video when we visit next week. And soon, we'll have the evidence to get his case reopened too." The fireworks continued overhead, but few were watching them now. All eyes were on the procession of police vehicles leaving the festival grounds. The mayor's carefully maintained composure had cracked completely as she was guided into a state police car. Chief Whitmore stared straight ahead as another cruiser carried him away. The Whitmore twins huddled in the back of a third vehicle, their varsity jackets stark against the black interior. Tripp was the last to be let out, his swagger replaced by shocked disbelief. As he passed Jada, she met his eyes calmly. "A real warrior knows that true strength comes from protecting others," she said clearly, "not from hurting them." He looked away first. The crowd began to disperse, but not before many stopped to shake Jada's hand or pat Caleb's shoulder. Their phones still captured every moment, ensuring that this night would live on in countless social media feeds and news reports. Luna, who had filmed the original video that started everything, pushed through to hug them both. "This is even better than the first viral hit," she said, wiping away tears. "This is real change. I hope you enjoyed that story. Please share it with your friends and subscribe so that you do not miss out on the next one. In the meantime, I have handpicked 2 stories for you that I think you will enjoy. Have a great day."